Welcome to the living room. My name is Stephen Blair. I'm an associate pastor here at Church of the Shepherd. John Spalding, our senior pastor, is not here at this moment. He's doing some renewal and rejuvenation, getting ready to lead us for the fall. In his place, I get a chance to be the interviewer, and Ben McWhorter-Rush is here. He's on staff as an associate pastor as well, and he's here as our special guest to talk about mental health. So Ben, thank you for joining us. We're glad that you're able to be part of this. You and I have other conversations throughout the week, but it's nice to be able to sit down like this and have a set topic.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always great to be a guest on the living room.
Yeah. So we're glad that you're joining us. Again, after living room, there's worship. But before worship starts, we want to have a conversation today about mental health because it really is a key conversation happening in our country right now. With the United States Olympic team, we know that Simone Biles has decided to step away from certain events citing mental health. And that has also made some people really happy. They applauded her for taking that as a priority. And other people have had some critiques and a lot of questions or confusions about what is mental health. So I thought it'd be important for the church to have a conversation. And I thought you'd be the perfect person to interview considering your focus on that in here at the Church of the Shepherd. So let's go ahead and start from the very beginning and say, what is mental health and why is it something the church should be talking about?
So mental health, to put simply, is loving well. And it all comes to how do you love yourself? And how you love yourself will influence how you love other people.
And that's something is a church topic too, right? That's not just our church topic, it's a church topic as well.
No, Jesus was very clear with his, what's important in the Bible, were the two greatest commandments, to love God and to love others as you love yourself. We tend to forget that little preposition, as.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was told Jesus, others, yourself spells joy. And you always put yourself last. And the problem is if you do Jesus, others, yourself always, right, it kind of misses out on the opportunity to love yourself because sometimes there's not enough of you left at the end.
Yeah,
right?
When you're saying yes to everything and then something important comes up and you just don't have the capacity or the emotional capabilities to say yes, what do you do?
Yeah. So you have to love your neighbor as yourself, which means you have to love yourself like you love your neighbor. It kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to live out compassion if you don't know what compassion is and where it's hard to talk about forgiveness and extending forgiveness or expecting other people to forgive you when you first don't know what that is like.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you have heard and maybe some of the people who are here have heard the church say about mental health that you would like to start off and say, no, just that's not the case. Let's stop saying those kinds of phrases. What's the first thing that you would just say, you go one, I'll go one, and say, if I can just cancel that out of our vocabulary, it'll be a good start.
First is that we always hear, oh, Jesus caused this. It's because he wants you to trust him, or it puts his temptation there to see about your faith, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that too. And you probably have heard that as well. That's not true. Right.
No, it's different to say Jesus caused this because he wants to tempt you, and then also completely different thing to say Jesus walks through with you in that, and it could be a learning and teaching moment. Yeah. Suffering has something to speak to, so listening to that, it's completely different than saying, oh yeah, God caused this to you because he wants to test you.
Yeah. One of my favorites, or least favorite, as it might be, is that depression and sadness are the same thing, or anxiety and worry are the same thing, because Scripture says we're supposed to, give our worries to God, or if we're sad, go to God with that, and that's true. But depression and anxiety are different than that. They're biologically, there's a physiological thing happening with either depression and anxiety. So it's kind of like giving God your depression, giving God your anxiety, in many ways might be similar to like giving God your diabetes, giving God your heart condition, right? It has more of that dimension versus just, well, listen, if I'm sad, I go to God, he makes me happy. And if I'm depressed, if God hasn't made me happy yet, I must be doing something wrong. So just being able to tell the difference between depression and sadness and anxiety and worry, that's my big pet peeve, least favorite thing the church does.
So another one for me would be, we always have to be joyful all the time. you're not a Christian, or Jesus isn't moving in you if you're not joyous. On the other hand, it's not Christian to be angry or upset.
Yeah. This idea that we can't be angry, but Jesus could. Jesus lost it in the temple, and yet we're supposed to have more emotional control than the Messiah. I mean, obviously he was angry for for a better reason, an injustice where I get angry if I'm running 5 minutes late and the person in front of me is slow.
Well, what it does is it perpetuates people-pleasing. It creates this weird, toxic culture of being nice all the time, even at the expense of what you're feeling on the inside. Is like, no, this isn't right.
Yeah. So when it comes to mental health, you're part of this ministry coming up here at the church. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of small groups that are coming and other resources that are available?
Yeah. So we have 3 groups. We have Disciple, we have Alpha. Alpha is a really great opportunity for you to have a safe space to be able to ask questions. I know that's a huge thing that people usually don't feel comfortable with, or that they think that the church isn't the place to be asking tough questions. Well, this will be an opportunity for that. But the one that I will be leading is what I call Holy Faith, Emotional Healthy Spirituality. And I like the idea of holy being with a W, because when we talk about holiness, what we're talking about is being whole people, whole persons. And to be a whole person is to be both spiritually healthy and emotionally healthy.
I had a professor in college. I was already studying religion at that time, and he had one hope. His hope was that the whole Bible would spell the word holy with the word W in front of every single H as a way of letting us know that there's a holism that is what God wants for us.
That's beautiful.
Right? Where body and soul are all connected, and you take care of one, it takes care of the other, and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, and Jesus clearly promises abundant life. And we think of abundant life as being, we need to be producing fruit all the time, fruit all the time, fruit all the time. Well, no, it means that we have seasons. Abundance is enough. And to be able to go into each season of our lives, whether it's winter and we're feeling lost or broken or in darkness, literally, or if it's summer and there's, lots of joy, lots of happiness, right? But to be able to honor that season and say, yeah, you know what? I'm in this period right now, and it's okay. It's okay for me to be in that spot, and it's okay for me to set up the boundaries and the margins to be able to say, hey, this is what I need in this moment. It is okay. It's going to be hard, and that's the part that you had introduced first with a lot of pushback. You're going to get pushback, right?
Yeah. So the emotionally healthy spirituality class, you said there's 4 different parts to that. Can you explain to those who are kind of trying to figure out if that's a class that God is calling them to be joining in? Can you tell us what that would look like so they can start imagining that for themselves?
Yeah, so Richard Foster, Dallas Willard are pretty great theologians and writers out there, and they often refer to spiritual formation or spirituality as movement. And I love that concept of movement, of rhythm, because it honors and I think it reflects seasons really well. And so when you're talking about emotional health or emotionally healthy spirituality, they kind of identify 4 different rhythms or 4 different movements that we see, and they build upon one another. The first being awareness, being self-aware, looking at what's happening within you or around you. The second would be to acknowledge. So not only just saying or seeing what's happening inside you, but actually being brave enough and having spiritual courage to acknowledge, which I like to call naming and claiming it. Name and claim it. If you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling hurt, name it and claim it. Then the third movement then is acceptance. And so once you get to a place where you name it and claim it for yourself, how do you accept that feeling to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling this right now. This is what it's trying to teach me. Let me sit with it. And then the fourth is letting go, surrender, being able to release it back, to work through it, to not stay in that place.
I think sometimes we might hear the phrase about emotionally healthy or mental health, and it's hard to know what that picture looks like or what it doesn't look like, right? I think might be more aware when it's not there. But those 4 movements help me out to understand what I would get out of that small group, and might be able to help anybody else look at that and say, I didn't know how much I might need that conversation. And they can sign up on our app, on our website to be part of those as well.
Yeah, whether you're struggling with trying to identify a particular emotion or a season that you're in, whether you're having difficulties being able to name it and claim it with boldness, acknowledging what's happening in your life, or whether you're just finding it real difficult to accept things or to letting go or surrendering to God. I think this class will be an opportunity to be able to walk through that, what each of those means, and to tackle some pretty hard things that are always kind of hush-hush with the church, which is like, how do you deal with dark nights of the soul? How do you do with doubt and suffering? So
one of the pictures I have of mental health is, I think about 2 people, and there's a drink of water in front of both of them. And one of the 2 people had like a big old sleeve of saltine crackers. And they're just eating cracker after cracker. And then after eating all those crackers, you look at the 2 waters that are in front of them. You ask which one wants the water the most. It's obviously the one who is really, really thirsty. In my experience, people who've been struggling with either recovery issues or mental health issues, oftentimes there's an overlap between those 2. Those are the people who have a super strong spiritual life. That a spiritual life isn't seen as the collection of times that we are getting it right, the different ways that it all fits right now. But I think a robust spiritual life is seen as somebody who is yearning for God, who wants God. And one of the things I wanted to share, and I'm here seeing you by nodding your head, and you seem like you would agree, that if you are dealing with depression or anxiety, some clinically diagnosed mental health conditions, or others as well, like that doesn't mean that you are outside of God's love or outside of what God's doing in your life. It's where you are physiologically that has some emotional connections to it. And if you're thirsting for God right now, then that is a beautiful place for you to be. In fact, if you're thirsting for God right now, you're probably light years ahead of other people who feel like they already have God. In my experience, people who feel like they already have God, they have God figured out, those are the very stale kind of spiritual lives. But if you're thirsty for God, if you're saying, I'm lonely right now, I'm struggling, there's a place to that where they're in the right place, where they are, if they're naming it and claiming it, then they're exactly where they should be.
Yep. And to add to that, it's also okay if you're feeling lost. It is also okay if you're feeling absent, if you're not feeling God's presence, if you're not feeling like you're connected. It's okay to be in that dark night. And this can be an opportunity for you to be able, when you think about winter is a great time for pruning. It's a great time to do some root work right in the ground.
Yeah.
I
had a situation. I went to give blood at a blood drive a few years ago, and had this amazing conversation with this lady. The lady took my blood. She was about to take my blood. She was taking my temperature, and she said, "Are you feeling okay today?" I go, "Yeah, absolutely." She said, "Well, you have 101 degree fever." I go, "What?" I felt great. I didn't feel bad at all. And so she said, "Well, have you been chewing gum?" I said, "Well, yeah, actually I have been chewing gum." I told her it's Winter Fresh. And Winter Fresh is much, much cooler. And I went, I don't know why I did. I was full an adult, doing that to another adult, not in her face, but I kind of passed her. And the blood draw lady said, "Honey, just because you feel it doesn't mean it's true." And I thought that's a whole lot of wisdom there. There's a lot of feelings that we have that are valid because there are feelings, but our feelings aren't always true. So you might be feeling like you're far from God. You might be feeling like you're the only one. You might be feeling as if the world is too scary of a place for you to live within. Those feelings are valid, and it's good for you to be able to name them and share them with others. But it's also important to know that there are some feelings we have that aren't actually true. And so sometimes it's helpful to have a group of people there to bounce your ideas off of what you're feeling, so they can either affirm the times you need to be affirmed, or they're able to say, I hear you, I know you're feeling as if this world is sad and tomorrow will only be worse. But just because you feel that, it doesn't mean it's true. And then you get a chance to have a conversation of hope that actually starts with sitting with the person versus ignoring the person.
So that's actually a good segue to talk about if you are feeling in those places. We do have tools, we do have resources and opportunities for you to reach out, to be able to talk through some of this stuff, because we're never alone in this. We have each other to support. God is there in our midst. And so one of the tools that we have is we do actually have a counselor on staff, Barb Powers, who's trained, who's great to work with. And I would encourage, if you need a counselor, to reach out to us and we'll get you connected to her. Or if you have a therapist or know, if you've been struggling with, should I go see one or shouldn't I? Absolutely, 100%. It's a great opportunity to be able to get some help, to be supported and loved upon in that way. The other opportunities is if you're in a period of loss and grief, we have a good group called Griefshare, and we are going to be doing that again in the fall. So if you're in that place and you're looking for a community where you can be able to express in healthy ways grief, that would be another opportunity. Lastly is come join my class.
Absolutely. There's a scripture where Elijah goes to the mountaintop and he's really sad. Doesn't mean he's depressed, but he's really sad. And he hears God in the still small voice. God wasn't in the wind and the earthquake and the fire and all that stuff. But it wasn't the still small voice that actually got him off the mountain. It took me a long time to read the scripture and see the real reason. But later on in that same chapter, God told Elijah, there's thousands of others just like you. And I thought it was just important that was what got him off the mountain, was God telling them, you're not alone. There's 40 million people right now with depression, 40 million with anxiety. That's the population of Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Arkansas, Nebraska, and Kansas all combined. They're wonderful people. You're not alone if you're struggling with this. There are people within this church that are struggling with this. There might be people within your own home that are struggling with it. But Church of the Shepherd wants to be very clear that you're not alone, and this church is here to walk with you, and we have classes to help you do that as well. So I want to say thanks again to Ben. Any final words as we wrap up?
Don't be afraid. Be curious, be courageous, be brave. You know, Brene Brown has this beautiful thing where she calls show up. So show up.
Show up. See you again. Thank you.